one and all, Jasper here, and in this video, I wanted to experiment a bit in regards to video game content. See if I can get away with just telling you all what happened and then tossing it at my editor to see if he can make it look nice. Don't worry, Sam. I trust you completely. One of my favorite games that I would play religiously when I got out of high school, which is a big deal as I'm quite a religious man, was Mount and Blade Warband, a fun third-person strategy game where you start off as bumfuck nobody with a short sword, horse, and if you're lucky, a wheel of cheese, which is still better than most people have in this world. But I'll be honest, I only played the game in vanilla one singular time. After that, it was mods galore, and what was my favorite mod? Well, you guessed it, Game of Thrones. The mod transforms the entire map of Calradia into Westeros and a decent chunk of Essos. I had many fun adventures, from helping Robb Stark in avenging his father and becoming king in the north, swearing fealty to Stannis and single-handedly uniting Westeros under his rule, and even going beyond the wall and helping Mance and his wildling horde decimate everything. Yet those were all long sessions that took me days and days to accomplish. So let me instead tell you about how for a short time, and in one day, I served under Balon Greyjoy and even became a king for a very short amount of time. In this session, I decided to play the part of an ironborn reaver, and you might be wondering why. Well, the simple answer is the goal was to slap Asha's cheeks, but also, sometimes being a Viking is just really fun. Getting to such a status, however, would prove difficult, but obviously not impossible. I was able to recruit a couple of peasants from the Iron Islands and took on some odd jobs from the towns, such as delivering cattle, hunting down nearby bandits, and slaughtering people at a wedding. Oh, don't worry, I wasn't invited, so no guest rights were harmed. Just the groom and the groom's family. But not the bride. I took her to the man who paid me. I'm sure she'll have a long, happy life with him. These jobs did okay in paying me, but I wasn't getting enough combat to level myself up, and more importantly, my army wasn't getting any experience. And if I ever wanted to raid something that had any actual value, I would need to turn these pathetic boys into men. And so, I traveled north to the wall, where we proceeded to hunt down and kill every single wildling raiding party we could. All the gear was ripped off the corpses, and survivors were taken prisoner, being held for ransom. And now that my peasants were armed with actual weapons and armor instead of hoes and shovels, we could look into making some real money. Sailing off to Essos, there were tons of Dothraki camps I could attack without worry, and while they did put up more of a fight than the wildlings, my ironborn raiders taught these discount Mongolians why armor is important on the battlefield and demolished them. Everything in the camp we found, we sold, including, of course, the survivors, as slavery was allowed in many parts of Essos. Now, with wealth and a powerful army at my back, I sailed back to Westeros to take part in the war that had taken over most of the continent, becoming a mercenary to Tywin Lannister and putting every village I came across to the torch. It was fun, and I even got into a few battles with Robb Stark and Brynden Tully. Finally, what I was waiting for to happen kicked in. Balon Greyjoy declared himself king of the Iron Islands and declared war on the Starks and Tullys. I quickly sailed to the islands and swore fealty to him. He gifted me a random town that I did not care for because I had much grander plans. Balon quickly amassed an army to attack the castle of Seagard. Now, sieges in this game are a bitch and a half to fight when you are the attacker, because the game sets up one ladder and you're expected to charge up that single point. So while casualties are always expected in these kinds of things, the amount we received was truly massive, with archers able to focus down our units, turning them into pincushions. The castle was taken, thanks to outnumbering the garrison 10-1, and also having some heavily armored units. A part of me was hoping that I would be gifted the castle, but sadly, I was passed over. It wasn't super surprising. I didn't lead the attack. I was only part of it, and while my units did do very well, I fell off the ladder when I was close to the top and broke my heels. So yeah, I could have done better. I did make up for it though at defending the castle. While most of the lords rode off to raid some of the nearby towns, I chose to hold up in Seagard and fight off every single invading force that came for it. And boy, did they come. It felt like damn near every other day a massive army of river or northmen tried to take the castle, and remember how I said taking the castle was a bitch and a half? Well, luckily, defending it can be quite easy with a decent force. Up they climbed the ladder, only to be greeted by me and my greatsword hacking them down one at a time. I probably killed over 100 in a single battle before I had to take a break doing the getting carpal tunnel. I was hoping that eventually Balon would get off his decrepit ass and ride out to take another castle with his army, and maybe this one would be gifted to little old me. However, after what felt like months, because I had been defending this single castle for months, there were no signs of being offensive. So, I decided to take some initiative. After all, I had under my command just over 100 ironborn raiders, and not a single one of them were less than tier 4. So I said, fuck Seagard, and went off to take a castle of my own. It wouldn't be easy. Most garrisons at least have 3 times my numbers, and if I want to keep the castle after the battle, I would need enough survivors to defend it. Yet, luck was on my side, as Riverrun, a rather nice castle, had been changing hands between the Riverlands and the Westerlands. Because of all these attacks, the garrison was not only reliably small, but also not very well equipped. I quickly launched an attack on it, climbing up that one fucking ladder. I mean, seriously, could we not have thought to bring 2? Either way, I cleaved my way through the militia, taking it with minimal losses. Now victory achieved, and as well as a very sexy castle, I asked Balon if I could have it, and while my message was sent to him, I left my army in said castle and sailed back to the Iron Islands to replenish my numbers. While I could still only march with 100 or so units, at this point I technically doubled my army size to 200 men. Riverrun was going to be a very tough nut to crack if anyone wanted to take it. Eventually, a message did arrive from Balon, and you know what they say, dark wings, dark words. This old, decrepit motherfucker not only decided that I would not get the castle, but only offered me a small coin purse as thanks for taking the damn thing. I told him to get bent, and just like that, I suddenly became a king and was now at war with the Iron Islands. I wasn't too worried though. They were still at war with the North and Riverlands, on top of them not doing jack shit while I was with them for months. I bet once Balon had calmed down, I could offer to join his kingdom again, for a price. So I went to sleep and then woke up the next morning to see an army of 1,000 ironborn ready to attack. What the fuck is this bullshit? 4 months I was sitting on my ass waiting to do something, yet when I become their enemy, not only do they think I'm the biggest threat rather than the 2 massive kingdoms they are at war with, but they also bring every single fucking person they could. This is bullshit. The attack began, and I feel like the only reason I was able to win this battle was there was a particular spot that I could kind of squeeze my body into and just swing my greatsword like a maniac while they tried to break through the shield wall of my army. It wasn't easy, and it was a long battle, but in the end, we repelled the forces. Not without sacrifice, though. A good chunk of my army was lost, and so I needed to replace them. Though no longer wanted on the Iron Islands, I was forced to recruit to the locals in the Riverlands. Though I could barely get a decent amount together, as half a day later, another army of 1,000 men attacked. I was pissed. If Balon had this kind of army just sitting under his ass, then why hadn't he been using it before, and more importantly, why is he using it on me? This fight was much more brutal than the last. The enemy was pushed back again, but this time, half of my forces were dead. Most of them were Riverland peasants I had recruited, but with each battle, my main elite fighting force was getting smaller and smaller. But surely, this was all Balon had left, right?
The next day.
While we fought valiantly, sadly this time the attackers were able to get a foothold on the wall and overwhelm us with numbers, taking the castle and dragging me back to the Iron Islands in chains. Though despite all this, I'm happy to tell you I did have the last laugh, Because you want to know what happened while I was sitting in a dungeon? Well, apparently the Iron Islands lost so many men, they didn't have enough to protect themselves from the North and Riverlands. The Riverlands took back Riverrun and Seagard, since I wasn't protecting them anymore, and the North waltzes in and just conquers all the castles on the Iron Islands, no doubt giving them quite a boost to their strength that would greatly help them in the war. Now, I think there is a very important lesson that we can all learn from this. Balon is a cunt and you should never fight for the guy. Okay, bye!